Going on YouTube, Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet and Violet video, and today we are going to be talking about the new rule set that was just announced a few hours ago. Yes, we now know what Regulation J will be, and I thought it would be today or at least tomorrow that they would make this announcement. That's why I took to a post on our channel, and I asked you guys, what are you wishing for post-Worlds, right? And we had some interesting answers, okay, or responses, I should say. Some of you are getting your wish, and others you're just going to have to stay disappointed for a little while longer, right? But anyway, how did we know? Well, it was announced from Cerebi.net on Twitter. If you take a look here, we're gonna go over all of this, of course, right? The Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Ranked Battle Regulation J rule set has been officially revealed. Use 2 restricted Pokemon, including, emphasis on including, mythical Pokemon. Yes, that is correct. Mythicals are finally legal once again. I did see some responses asking, is this the first time Mythicals have been legal? No, they were actually legal back in the final format of Sword and Shield, Series 13 as we used to call it back then, during the Dynamax era. Yes, you did get a chance to play with the Mythicals for, I think it was like 2 months, right? And then after that, then we started playing Scarlet and Violet because that's when it was released. So I am a little bit surprised that they did release this a little early, all right? But here we are, we're playing with Mythicals. But the more interesting news was after that, if you take a look at the comment after from Cerebi, it says, while ranked battles will be Regulation J, VGC will use Regulation H until November 2025. So on ladder, you can play Regulation J with Mythicals up until like next year. But then for competitive wise, we're going back to Regulation H at least until November 2025. So that was a little bit of a shocker because you never really had something like this before. Usually ranked battles was always the same format as competitive, at least from what I understand, at least throughout Sword and Shield too, right? But now for the first time, we have a bit of a separation here where whatever you can play at official tournaments is different than ranked ladder, right? And I think it has to do with something about, accessibility to the Mythicals. And I guess I can understand that. But it's just going to be a little bit strange if you're trying to play 2 different formats. You might have to do a little bit of a workaround, but probably just stick to Showdown with Regulation H. But we'll talk about that part, in the other half of the video. I just want to look at Regulation J first and just see what we're getting ourselves into. So if you click the link here, you can actually see, the whole list of what is actually allowed to be played here. So again, they have the title here, the 10th regulation series in Scarlet and Violet era. Regulation J was the second new regulation of 2025 and features use of up to 2 restricted on a team including mythical Pokemon for the first time, right, in Scarlet and Violet. Official live tournaments in the Play Pokemon circuit would use Regulation H until 2025. So that's everything I just said. And basically Regulation J right up here, it's going to be from September 1st to January 4th, 2026, right? So what can I play? All right. Right away, we got Mew, legal. Jirachi, legal. Deoxys, legal. All right, Fion Manaphy, legal. Darkrai, legal. Okay, Shaman, legal. Arceus, Arceus is legal. Okay, Keldeo, Melota, Deoxys, Hoopa Unbound. Remember, we played against Hoopa Unbound in our draft league, a couple months ago. Volcanion, same thing. Yep, also was appearing in our draft league. Legal, okay, and then Magearna, right, Zarude, and then Pecharunt. So what's actually interesting this time around versus Series 13 back in Sword and Shield, few things. First of all, there's a restriction with the amount that you can have on one team. So 1 mythical only, right? Whereas in Sword and Shield, it was anything goes. You could use as many as you wanted. And then now there are more Pokemon that are legal now that were not able to be used during Series 13 in Sword and Shield, right? And that's going to make a difference, obviously. And of course, Dynamax versus Terrestrialization. Yes, that's still a thing as well. You have Miraidon and Koraidon now, as opposed to Sword and Shield where you didn't have that. Yes, there's going to be some differences, and you do have a restriction here, and you have Terrestrialization. So, yeah, and then of course, the restrictors they're just going to remain as it is. Just to give you a preview of what was once legal back in Sword and Shield, there was only one official live tour in-person tournament that was able to use Series 13, right? And that was from Taiwan back in 2022. 86 players, right? And look at this. This is what was allowed back then. All right, you can tell that this is going to be very, very different. First of all, look at this. All right, you got Zacian, Dialga, Kyogre, Yveltal, Lunala, and Regieleki. Right, like I said, there was no restriction to how many of the mythicals or the restrictors that you could have on a team. You could have as many as you wanted, right? And again, this was during Dynamax era. You had Yveltal on your team. Yveltal was so good back then. And I wish it was just allowed now, along with Xerneas and whatnot. Look at this. How about this one? Zacian and Calyrex Shadow Rider here, right? With the AV Yveltal and whatnot. Yes. Like, again, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just showing you, like, this is what what you could use back in Sword and Shield when everything was legal. However, we do have that restricted now, like I said. So things are going to be a little bit different, right? And I can already give you some ideas as far as what can be seen. So let me go into Showdown here and just give you a taste of what you'll be expected to use and probably expected to face against. Of course, we have to kind of start here with Arceus because, again, this is the first time that Arceus is legal in competitive play. So everyone's going to try and use this in the early get-go. Like, why wouldn't you use it, right? Look at its base stats, 120 of everything, right? So the bulk is excellent. The speed tier is very good. And then, of course, the damage output is going to be strong as well. And, you know, it's Arceus, okay? So right away, you know, just there's a couple of things that you have to remember when you're using this. So first of all, if you read its ability, multi-type, if this Pokemon is an Arceus, its type changes to match its held plate. So for example, if I had a Spooky plate over here, and if I had Judgment, okay, normally Arceus would be able to change its type into the Ghost type, right? But that is not the case in this game, right? Especially with Terastallization and Scarlet and Violet. You don't do that. If you try, it's actually just going to stay as the normal form, right? So if you do this in the game, it'll look like this, right? This is what the normal appearance looks like. It won't change to the actual Ghost Arceus or whatever. But the type that Judgment takes on will still match the plate. That's the key there, right? So even though you'll have the normal appearance, the attack of Judgment itself will still take on whatever plate it is holding. So in this case, it is a Spooky plate, right? So it's a Ghost type attack, right? But that being said, what is the general consensus that you can definitely use Arceus for? So right away, it's this. The Choice Band Extreme Speed spam from Arceus is just going to be ridiculous, right? Now you add the fact that you can have Chen-Pao along with it. And now you're just combining Sword of Ruin with this thing, all right? And you already know how strong something like Dragonite was with Chen-Pao, right? Now all of a sudden you have Arceus doing this, okay, alongside Chen-Pao, and you're just going to one-shot a lot of different things. So this is already something that's easy that people are going to try already. And then from here, you can kind of round out the rest of your squad depending on what you want to use or whatever art type you're trying to play. But at the very least, these two will definitely be a combo that a lot of people are going to start and use. There are a couple other things that you can also do with Arceus. So I also saw this earlier. You do have access to Perish Song, so you can definitely be this bulky Perish Song user. And you'll probably expect someone like Wolf to be able to try something like this. But that's just another gimmick that you can do with Arceus. But another one is that this thing also gets access to Trick Room, believe it or not. So you get a bulky Trick Room setter, okay, right? Which is kind of funny. Now, if it seems weird when you have like a fast Pokemon going for Trick Room, but in this case, maybe you can actually make it work here, right? Depending on the moveset that you want to do with it. But at the very least, Arceus has a couple of cool tools that you can definitely take advantage of here, right? So besides the E-Speed Judgment stuff and like Trick Room Paris, like you got great coverage, right? So depending on what you want to do here, you have it all. So we'll see what happens when people try and use this thing, but I still think like Chen-Pao and the Bandit stuff with Extreme Speed is just the best way to go, at least in the early get-go. Next up is Magearna over here. So again, another really, really strong special attacker, very slow as well. And back when it was legal in Sword and Shield Series 13, this was a pretty standard set that you could do with it. The Steel Stab move, the Fairy Stab move, and Fleur Cannon, base 130, right? 90% accuracy, of course, and, -2 after you're done with it. But it was a bulky Trick Room setter. Like, again, 115 defense, 115 special defense. 80 HP is not too bad there. So it is a pretty bulky Trick Room setter that can sweep, especially, with your not really caring about Intimidate, right? Because you're not a physical attacker. Slap on a Life Orb on this thing, and you're going to clean some house, right? Especially if this thing could go like Terra Fairy, right? Now, look at the ability Soul Heart, right? So again, you're gonna raise your damage, your special attacking stat in this case by 1, right? When another Pokemon faints, right? So that doesn't even have to be like your opponent. It could be your own Pokemon that can faint, right? And then you would just get that +1. So that's the scary thing about Magearna. Like, even if your own Mon dies, that could be like a good thing, because then this thing gets to go to +1, which is kind of funny when you think about it. I also have seen the Calm Mindset, of course, with Magearna, so you can always get a +1 that way and try and set up if you don't want to go the Trick Room route and just go for like Calm Mind and Protect ideas, right? Maybe even Leftovers here if you want to consider that. So I do think something like that or that kind of set will be definitely used there. But again, the Soul Heart ability is just kind of crazy. So be prepared to see this on some like Calyrex Ice Rider squads. Ideally, maybe you can pair this with like a strong physical attacker, right? I could even see something like Koraidon being paired with this the same way like Ice Rider was being paired with it as of late. You already just get that Dragon Fairy Steel combo going right away. You could even probably do like some Miraidon shenanigans with this. You know, again, just nuke something with Miraidon. This thing gets +1, and then all of a sudden you have like +1 of these stab moves here, and you know, it's just looking really, really strong right now. So I do expect those to be easy choices, right? You know, just whatever team Miraidon had with Calyrex, maybe probably just easily try on Magearna. Of course, two very different Pokemon, but at the very least, easy set that you can try is just something like this. So Darkrai is also now legal in Regulation J, but however, I don't think this will be quite as good as some other options. I know people are going to be excited to use it because, again, you get to finally use Darkrai in a competitive format, but again, Dark Void, again, this is the move that, you know, we all hated back then, but 50% accuracy now. That's a big no-no, because then you're just not going to hit half the time. And even though you get to put things to sleep when you do hit it and make them take chip damage over time with Bad Dreams, it's not going to work as easily when, you know, there's so much more Miraidon running around now in Scarlet and Violet. So in electric terrain, you can't put things to sleep, which means Dark Void, you know, has that to compete with. Right now, technically, this hasn't stopped the play of Amoonguss and Smeargle putting things to sleep, but I think it's just harder, even harder now, if you really wanted to use Darkrai with the 50% accurate Dark Void. It's pretty good special attack stat, right? The speed is not bad either. It's a little bit frail. Does this thing still get access to Nasty Plot? Okay, it still gets access to Nasty Plot, but you know, I just think there's better options if you really wanted a special attacking nuker. Like if I really wanted to, like I would just use a Miraidon over something like a Darkrai. Like I'm fat, I have the same base special attack, I get terrain control, and I'm faster, right? And I have better bulk. So give me one reason why I should use this thing over something like a Miraidon or even like a Calyrex, right? So I think it'll be cool for people to use and try, obviously, you know, because this is now something that you do have access to. But I just don't think it'll be as good as like some other options that you have available to you. Another one that's legal that people are definitely going to try and explore is Deoxys. So again, look at the bulk is even worse than Darkrai, but faster speed, faster special attack, right? And that's good. But 50 of the bases in your HP, defense, and SpDef, that just screams Focus Sash in my opinion. Now, again, with so high of a special attacking stat, something like Expanding Force could be really strong with something like an Indeedee, right? So now you get terrain control, and now the Expanding Force is just going to hit really, really hard. But why would I do this when I have this that I can do the same thing with, right? I've got a Calyrex Ice Shadow Rider here, so I've got the same base speed, right? And I hit harder, and I'm actually a little bit bulkier than the Deoxys here. So why would I do that when I can always just use Calyrex? So that's what I mean, right? You do have access to Deoxys, but if the restricted is just better, then just use the restricted as opposed to, you know, trying to force yourself in you making a mythical work. But that being said, I know people are definitely going to try it just because, again, it is allowed, it is legal, and it's something that maybe it's an old childhood favorite that you want to try and use. Does this thing get... Alright, so it's get Calm Mind, you get Nasty Plot too? Alright, so just like Darkrai, you get Calm Mind and Nasty Plot. But again, what is the advantage that this has that the Calyrex Shadow Rider doesn't have? Am I missing something? Let me know. Volcanion is also going to be an interesting pick here because, again, with that strong special attacking stat and the slow speed, you can easily see this being put in Trick Room. But water absorb, again, is pretty good. That gives you a pretty good, decent answer into the Surging Strikes Urshifu, as well as like some of the Kyogre teams running around. And then Steam Eruption, again, water type attack, but again, 30% chance to burn the target, which is also pretty cool. You could burn a Calyrex, for example. That could be like really, really cool. And then of course you have your Heat Wave over here, right? So technically you can be put also on like either a rain team, or you can even be put on a sun team, because again, you can have access to both water and fire type attacks. The bulk is not bad. Again, Spadef 90, HP is 80, defense 120, so there's a good selling point there. But we'll have to wait and see. I do think something like Landorus, at least either Landorus technically, I think the Therian one could be like pretty good, and even this one, just because again, you're weak to ground, so you can pivot out into a flying type here. And then of course, Volcanion still weak to electric type attacks, which again, Landorus can have immunity against. So I think Landorus also has pretty good synergy here. You know, it just really depends on where you really want Volcanion to thrive in, what kind of idea. I think you can either put this on something like a Koraidon team, right? Definitely, at the very least, you know, you have good coverage and you have good resistances all around. Again, you know, with Koraidon being weak to fairy, you can also resist that. This being weak to electric, you can also just resist that. So there's some synergy going on here if you can bring out the sun if you really need it. Otherwise, you can also technically still put this with Kyogre if you really need to. But it really just depends on what is your goal with Volcanion, right? Do you just want this to be like a special attacking nuker? Because if that's the case, then, you know, there's other options to do that are stronger, like again, the Miraidon or the Calyrex. So you need some kind of role that only Volcanion can do on your team, that maybe something else cannot do. But at the very least, it'll still be kind of cool to try it, just because again, it is legal. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think it's still going to be a decent pick. Again, base speed 70 means, again, like what we said earlier, you can't put this in Chirkum. You can also technically put this in Tailwind to an extent, because again, you can still outspeed a lot of the big meta threats under Tailwind. So you have that going for you. But we'll have to see what people try and use with Volcanion. All right, we won't go over all the mythicals here, but the last one I do want to at least mention, just because again, it's something that, you know, a lot of people get to finally play, is Pecharunt. So Poison Ghost typing here, and of course the ability is the selling point, Poison Puppeteer. If a target is poisoned, all right, it also just becomes confused, right? So I could definitely see some shenanigans with something like Recover, of course, and then just protecting, right? Just letting them take poison chip damage every single turn. And then you have access to, you know, at least Shadow Ball, so you can do some decent chip damage. Your base stats aren't like amazing, you know, 88 for everything, which is like, okay, right? But your defense is 160, right? And your Spadef is still 88. So what I imagine here is maybe you just don't really invest in your defense. It's already like high enough. Maybe just literally max your HP and maybe pick like a Spadef nature, or maybe even technically defensive nature, and just maybe like put a little bit of points here and then like more points into your special defense. And then you can just play this as like something like a stall thing, where you can still go for like Malignant Chain, right? 50% chance to badly poison the target. Or you could even do something like this with Toxic and just, you know, badly poison them, and then just keep alternating your recovers and protects. And then before you know it, then the opponent just kind of drops from there. So it'll be interesting what kind of team would use this. It would have to be relatively niche. Because again, the poison stall isn't something that, you know, you see on most of the VGC teams right now. But that being said, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But you have some ideas, you know, with Toxic Spike, you know, with Wheezing and whatnot. So if that was the case, maybe you can put Pecharunt on something like that, especially when you have like the Dondozo teams, for example. So maybe you can see Pecharunt being used there. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think people will definitely experiment on the poison Toxic stall stuff, just because it is a playstyle that does exist with Pecharunt. All right, I'll just say like one last thing, you know, about the mythicals in general before we start taking a look at the second part of the format tweet here. But, you know, yes, mythicals are legal, but with the exception of like a couple like Arceus and Magearna and whatnot, they're not that amazing. You know, you could do the same job that you want them to do with something even better that isn't a mythical. So, you know, take it for what you will. Try them all, obviously, just because again, you do have access to them, and you can only play them for a limited amount of time because once January hits, then goodbye. So at least play them a little bit, of course. But overall, if you're looking for super like competitive squads, most of these just aren't really going to fit on those squads, especially when there's better Pokemon to use right now in Scarlet and Violet, like the Miraidon, Koraidon stuff, the Calyrexes. Those are just better options. But again, there are a couple here that you can definitely use. But if this is supposed to take up the restricted slot, then maybe you don't use it. And I could definitely see a lot of teams that just say, you know what, I don't need to use any of these. I'm perfectly fine with stuff like Chenpal, Fluttermane, Miraidon, Koraidon stuff, Calyrexes. Those are good enough. I don't really need these things. And stuff like Incineroar and Rillaboom are still very, very good and irreplaceable, where these guys are just more like collector's items. So, but of course, it's still early. There's still lots of anticipation. We'll have to wait and see. You can make anything work with proper time and team building. But yeah, moving forward, we'll see what people decide to try and do with these. All right, so here's the second part of the announcement. So like we saw earlier in the video, this is a comment underneath their original post. But while rank battles will be Regulation J, VGC will use Regulation H until November 2025. So if you're going to any regionals, anything in person, they're just going to be playing Regulation H. So no restricteds, goodbye. Kick them to the curb. Urshifu, goodbye. So then what are we expecting back from Regulation H 2.0? So first of all, this was the Sneasler format, right? So you have to deal with Dire Claw yet again. So, I asked you, would you rather deal with Sneasler or would you rather deal with Calyrexes and whatnot? So I leave that answer up to you. Then, of course, remember Dragonite was also really, really good in this format as well. Dragonite with that loaded dice set that always used something like Scale Shot over here. That was also very prominent in Regulation H. And then don't forget about Archeladon, man. Like Archeladon, Pelipper Rain teams were also very, very strong back then. So feel free to explore that route if you also want to do something along the sorts. Something like Blood Moon Ursaluna, which was used way more in this format than it is even right now. So that's also within the table. Then you had some stuff like, with Sinistra involved, along with Archeladon and Pelipper. So that's also something that you can definitely play. Annihilate sets are still going to be, you'll run into the occasional Choice Scarf stuff, but this is also the return of Mouse Ape, right? As we also like to say. This is either something like Leftovers or a Berry. And here, obviously, this is the Bulk Up Protect stuff, where you have Rage Fist, Drain Punch, right? Bulk Up, Protect. So you can always just do something like this. This is Defiant usually, right? And then from here, you could be whatever terror you want. So the return of Mousehold, all right? And then sometimes these four will be on the same team, right? So remember, we've seen, teams like this in the past where like you have both the core of Archeladon and Pelipper and the core of Mousehold and Annihilate. You'll definitely see something like that yet again. So yeah, and there were other like really, really strong ideas and archetypes, but how about the other one? How about the Sneasler balance stuff? Obviously was also pretty good. Just again, we did hint at it a little bit earlier, but stuff like Sneasler, Rillaboom. Then you had stuff like Magbar and Electabuzz that was also on these teams, right? I'll just put both just for the sake of it, right? These two were also pretty good in those formats because again, Vital Spirit was pretty valuable to them. And then these were just like really, really bulky redirectors, would Follow Me and the Eviolite. So you could definitely explore this. And then you also had access to stuff like Dondozo and Tatsugiri, right? Now, technically, the Sneasler balance teams use the solo Dozo, as we also like to call it. But you also had Dondozo, Tatsugiri that was also still like really, really strong in this format as well. Because again, no more restricted, so Dondozo can come out to play. Who else can come out to play now? Goldango teams, right? So like, how about like Talonflame, Goldango teams? Remember these guys? Okay, and then to an extent, Glamora also was able to come out and do something, amongst this, right? This is always a core that a lot of people used to play a lot in that format there. So, more or less, you'll see something like this again. Even Tyranitar was used in this, right? Tyranitar was also pretty good. Again, in a format where you just didn't have Urshifu, that means Tyranitar can come out and play. Like, it's still like a really, really good mod. Like, the base stats are strong. That you get sand, which gives you weather control, right? And then, you know, you can actually play sand, right? You know, right now it's just all about rain and sun in these restricted formats, but in a non-restricted format, all the weathers are viable. So like even Alolan Ninetales was also pretty useful. Right, where's that Ninetales here? Okay, and I could go on and on. Like, oh, you know what else? I just remembered another steel type. King Gambit was also pretty good. Even other things like Salamence rain teams, you know, with Basculegion in the back end, that was also like pretty good there. So, you know, lots of different Pokemon that you forgot were Pokemon because of how dominant and how restrictive the restricted format, pun intended, is, right? Because it's just all about finding checks to Calyrexes and Miraidons and whatnot. But once all of those restricteds and Ubers are off the board, then the fun stuff gets to come out and play. You know, like Gambit, you know, Salamence, Tyranitar, Ninetales. These are Pokemon we used to love and enjoy using, but obviously our choices are limited when we have to deal with Ubers and Legendaries. Even something like Porygon 2, there's no Urshifu, right? So even P2 can come out and do something here, you know, be a bulky Trick Room setter, and, you know, set Trick Room and whatnot. You also used to see like Vivian. Vivian was on teams like this too. And then how about like Indeedee Armarouge, right? Indeedee Armarouge was also like a combination that you could do. Like, I'm just throwing Pokemon on the board here, right? Okay, and even Hatterene was also a thing, right? Don't forget about Hatterene. A lot of these hard Trick Room cores was also involved there. And then if you had Psychic Terrain, this is where like Sneasler had the Psychic Seeds to proc Unburden, so you got to see something like that. But yeah, Farigiraf was also very strong, you know, still in the format like this. It could definitely do even more now that some of the other dark types are just left at home. But yeah, I digress. So if you're looking forward to Regulation H, right? I mean, the question I have now is like, I guess you're just only really limited to playing it on Showdown, right? Because you can't play this on card. It's only Regulation J. So I wonder how people are going to be practicing with this stuff. I guess it's just only Showdown and amongst your friend groups. And as far as like for me, I don't know how I'm actually going to make videos for Regulation H when the time comes. Because usually, you know, if I make those rental teams, I'm able to showcase them on ladder. But I can't do that if it's just only Regulation J. So I wonder if I just only release PokePaste, right? And then we just do some Showdown coverage, maybe enter some limitless tournaments. I don't know, I guess. But to enter a limitless tournament just to showcase one team for one video, that's like hours. You know, we don't have that kind of time. So I'm still thinking about how I'm going to actually, you know, create some stuff for that. Like, yes, I can still do like meta-analysis stuff and tournament reports and whatnot. That stuff I never needed card for. But as far as like the battles, you know, I don't want that to get taken off immediately. So I'll have to think of something in that regard there. But anyway, let me know what you think of the announcement for both Regulation J for September and Regulation H for VGCs. You know, it's something like this is different. We never had something where we had two different formats at the same time. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. And if you do need coaching for any of these, right, for Regulation J or even H in general, feel free to reach out and sign up with the tier 3 sub on the channel. If you look in the video description below, as well as in the pinned comment section, there is a link to join the channel with that tier 3 sub. And then from there, you can get a one-on-one coaching session with me via Discord, where we get to build a team from scratch, where we get to hash out all the EVs, potentially test them out, and then make adjustments as we go. Right? So if you're interested in that, definitely click those links and sign up with tier 3. And then don't forget to join the Discord too. That's always been free. I think we're still just about over 1,200 members now, or just a little bit under 1,200. So again, our community continues to grow in the competitive scene. All right, but that's it. We'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.